on my 34th birthday, I put my foot on the final continent. It was Antarctica, and I stepped straight into a pile of penguin shit.
Hi guys, welcome back to Interval Conversations. We're on season 2 now, and I'm so glad to be joined today by the wonderful Richard Sykes. Now, over lockdown, he's provided us with the wonderful tune a day, and he is a jack of all trades. So Richard, how are you doing?
I'm very well. Lockdown's treated me extraordinarily well, and I feel very guilty for all the people who it's really had an impact on. But I was very lucky. I resigned and retired from my job in January, just before lockdown hit. So I very, very fortuitous, and I pinch myself every day to think, yeah, it really worked out.
So Richard, how did you actually first get involved in this wonderful industry?
Total accident. And I think that's, it was quite organic, you know. I was able to weave my way into a certain niche, but it started out at university. I did a degree in English and music, and I wrote what seemed to combine the two things for me in a dissertation that was my musical. And I wrote my first musical for my dissertation from a degree. I got very good marks, and I was basically ready to just sit on it and let everything. Well, basically, I wanted an income first, and I didn't want to get any income from my music, and so it just sat there on a shelf. And then, in the year 2000, for the Millennium Celebrations, an operatic society decided that they'd like to do something different and have a premiere. And so I just happily got it off the shelf, gave it to them, and said, "Okay, well, let's try this one then." And I was very lucky. It provided the happiest night of my life. I did it at the Lawrence Batley Theatre. It was 20 years ago to this very month, and it was wonderful to hear people singing your songs and laughing at your jokes, but also tapping their feet along and clapping along. It was magic. And I won't pretend it wasn't an emotional night. It was just beautiful for me. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Brilliant. Because as well as writing musicals as well, you've worked on some cruises as well. So could you tell us about those?
That was cause and effect. Again, I slipped into that quite by accident. I was working when I did the musical at a local printers. And I was a studio manager by that point, which was a lovely, nice, steady career, you know, graphic design. And then someone offered me the chance, because they'd seen my musical, of being a pantomime dame at the Leeds City Varieties. Now, that's a panto I'd been to when I was a kid. And so I absolutely adored it. And I knew it was magic. Great panto, and they've done great ones ever since. But I was in the year 2000. And the next audition down was for cruise ships. Now, I always, whenever I've done auditions, I've always wanted to be one of the sexy singers, the down with the kids, and no one ever hires me as that. That just isn't me. So what they tend to do is try and find another job that I can do. And one of the jobs was an animator on a cruise ship. This was bizarre, because that sounds a ludicrous title. It sounds like somebody who draws for a living. That's not what I did. What my job was to try and animate the passengers and get them going and move them from area to area and get them to have a really good time. It was a challenging job. It was a small ship, but it got me into cruising. And from then on, I worked successive seasons. Sadly, after it was on September the 11th that really had a dampener on the cruise industry. Everyone thought that a cruise ship was going to be the next target, and it proved not to be the case. But for the next year, what I had to do was find alternative entertainment, alternative employment. And I went to work at Alton Towers. Yeah, I was a character comic there called Lionel Diamond. I was twinned with a drag queen, real name Michael Batchelor, actual name Tanya Hyde. Originally, we were going to be called Mark Spitz and Veronica Swallows, and we abandoned that because we thought it was going to be far too dirty for the kids. But the material we were doing was even more filthy. So I auditioned for that with a song from my musical, and it seems that I've got everywhere from that little catalytic starting point. And it was wonderful. Then I went back to the cruise ships, and I worked my way up to being a cruise director. The thing about the cruise industry is that you have to be flexible. You have to sort of manipulate and wind your way through the various challenges that come your way. And one thing I found was that I could put my finger into all the different pies on board a cruise ship. So I was a manager because I was older than a lot of the team that I was with. I could write songs and perform them at the piano, which helped as well, which meant that if everything was going to hell, they could just shove me on a piano and I could play and get away with it. So I found myself very quickly getting involved in the whole ship operation. And I was going from ship to ship, starting ships off and being really heavily involved. And before I knew it, 20 years had gone by. And I hadn't had a social life. And I'd missed an awful lot of family events and a family life because I'd spent all of it at sea. And I tended to get very bogged down in where we were going, what was happening. There was just no respite from it. So this year I decided to jack it all in, and I jacked it in just in time. Just in time.
The perfect time.
You can't deny, I've had really good luck and a lot of good timing in my life. That's about it.
So while you were on the cruises, were there any like personal highlights for you? Like,
oh, so many. I mean, in terms of places, I put my foot on every single continent. I did that by my 34th birthday. On my 34th birthday, I put my foot on the final continent. It was Antarctica, and I stepped straight into a pile of penguin shit. Marvelous, yes, marvelous. It's an incredible place. But as I started to be known for being Mr. Gaffer Tape, the sort of person you send onto a failing operation, and I could plug the holes and make sure it all worked. What I tended to be doing was being put on adventurous cruises. So I was going to things like the Northern Lights and going up to the White Sea over the top of Norway. As you can see, I'm not a particularly brown person. I'm very, very white indeed. I look like I've been using Tipex as a moisturizer. So I'm honestly a true Yorkshire blood white guy, and it depresses the hell out of me. But it does mean that going to warm climes doesn't really appeal to me. I tend to turn purple for the first 2 days and all my skin falls off. It's hopeless. So the colder climes tended to suit me a lot better, and the more adventurous cruises. I've been up and down the Amazon 7 times. I've done loads of things you don't want to hear about here. But that was the reason that I was on these adventurous cruises, because I could just fill in the gaps here and there.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So we've briefly talked about Good Grief as well, your first musical. It was originally called Curtains, I believe, from what I've seen, but the wonderful representatives.
It was again, that was incredibly fortuitous. The reason it was called Curtains, someone dies in the show. A guy dies in the show, and the whole reason the show exists is because this guy dies, and what they have to do is put on a show with a dead body in the show. It's a bizarre, ludicrous plot. It makes no sense. I still like the songs, but the show itself, it just rips along. It's a lovely parody of a Fred and Ginger musical, with a few pantomime elements thrown in for good measure. And it was originally called Good Grief. It then got turned in, I called it Curtains to put on at the Lawrence Batley Theatre. And if you know your musicals, you'll know that there is another musical called Curtains, which was launched in 2006. It was written by Kander and Ebb, the people who wrote Cabaret, Kiss of the Spider Woman, Chicago, really big name in the musical industry. And I thought nothing of it when they launched it. I just thought, oh well, it's a title, it'll do. Mine was still playing with amateur theatres. And in fact, one amateur company down south put on the show and were threatened with legal action by the Kander and Ebb estate. because obviously I was using a title that they thought they had a prior claim to. They didn't. I did, because I performed it in 2000, and theirs was first put on in 2006. But they were tenacious, and their solicitors were rather bullying, and they stopped the production that was down south until they changed the name and stopped it being called Curtains. Now, I was out of the country on a ship at this time, so I couldn't get involved in the legal proceedings. But what I did was make sure that when I got back, I took a hold of the situation. And I got a great solicitor who had nothing to do with show business whatsoever. Nothing. All he said was, what you should do is try and trademark the title Curtains. I said, well, there's no way you can trademark that, because surely curtains, everyone knows that if you're involved in show business, yeah, curtains are part and parcel of it. So he said, well, give it a whirl. So I did. I paid some money down, and I sat on a trademark for 3 months. And I thought, is this going to work? And it did. No one challenged the trademark. So I then owned the trademark for Curtains. Now, this caused the Kander and Ebb people a real problem, because of that title and because of the threats they'd made to me. What I could do is just return the letter that they'd sent to me straight back to them. And we came up with some proposals as to what we could do to get out of this. Theirs could be called Kander and Ebb's Curtains. Mine could be called Richard Sykes' Curtains. That was one point. They could pay me every time they used the word curtains within that show context. They were never going to do that. And so in the end, I chose to just sell them my trademark. And so I, like I said, I retired earlier this year.
As well as...
I know. But they deserved it. They deserved it. I don't like bullies.
As well as Curtains, or Good Grief, as it's known now, you've written By George. So,
I have.
So could you tell us about By George?
I'd love to. It's a musical which is a Yorkshire piece. It's set in Yorkshire.
Always the best.
And indeed, it's set in the back room of a Yorkshire chip shop, basically. And it's a one-set show. And again, it's got a lot more. My style's become more grown up over time, and so this has resonant social themes, but also it's still funny. I've still got the farce elements in there, and it's got some lovely lines, and again, some nice songs. I don't do subtlety really in composition. I tend to just hit people hard with a kicker of a line, and so you'll find there's a lot of earworms within this musical. But yeah, there's I've written 22 songs for it. I've cut it down to 14 for the runtime, and made sure it all works properly. But yeah, it's been very exciting. And over the this last month, because we got back to live performance, I've been able to perform some of the songs live on stage and get some immediate feedback from an audience perspective. And that's been good. It's been very, very nice and productive.
So what is your writing process for shows? Like, how do you develop the songs, the script?
It is a long process. Usually you'll find that it's collaborative. People one will write a script, one will write the lyrics, one will write the melody. I do the lot. So I rely a lot on my imagination, and I rely a lot on dreams. So I wake up in the morning usually with some kind of melody in my head, and the key is to get it down before you forget it. Like every sort of dream diary that teens have, or this is my process for writing songs, and usually it fits with a vocal. Cole Porter did the same thing. He didn't have a separate in tray for melodies and a separate in tray for lyrics. They used to come together, and so that's basically my process too. Fitting with the musicals, what happens is you get a story, and that impacts a lot of thought processes and trying to get the correct song in the right place at the right time. So it's not like writing a jukebox musical. It's where the songs are already written. I prefer to have a process where I have a song, then write. I prefer to have a musical idea and then write that rather than try and force it. Again, it's an organic process. I prefer it that way. But I'm not a guitarist. I'm a keyboard player, so I find the complicated chords and just hammer them out.
So, with regards to the musicals as well, where did you get the ideas from? So, with By George, obviously, it's set in the chip shop, Yorkshire. Is that from people you know, or?
That actually wasn't the original idea. We were going through a sort of, we still are, sadly. When I started writing it, Brexit wasn't a word, but we were looking at our relationship with Europe. The vote was about to happen. We were looking at that, and so I was kicking around ideas of isolation from Europe, ideas of social upheaval, and that's where that came from. Along the way, it's kind of like it's like a snowball at the top of a snow slope, you know, gradually gathering more and more as it rolls down towards its inevitable conclusion. So it's picked up elements of feminist writing in there. It's picked up isolation from kids and generation gaps. So there are an awful lot of themes in there. There's also themes about Facebook and social media and how isolating that can be. But the key theme now is about identity. And I think that's what it's been about since the beginning. But it's gradually snowballed and got all these different themes in there. So it makes it relevant. You know, if you start out with one idea and you have tunnel vision and you pursue that, then I don't think you get the advantage of time. This has taken 10 years to actually happen because I've been, busy. But it means that there's been an awful lot of different influences in there, and it's become a lot stronger because of that. I think so, anyway.
Brilliant. So, so Richard, throughout lockdown, you did a daily tune a day. So could you tell us about that? Because I loved them. All the Victoria Wood, Monty Pythons. Yeah,
there was an awful lot in there. The thing about that was it started as a necessity. First of all, I had to do something to stop myself going mad. I'm alone in a house, and a lot of energy and a lot of ideas buzzing around, and it just had to be channeled in some way. And also, I thought, well, what I want to do is some good. So I started adding charity buttons to it and making sure that the NHS got some money out of it as well. I did a bit for mental health as well. Did Mind charity is fantastic. So I did some of that. But basically the idea was to put something positive on people's feeds, to make sure that on Facebook there was something other than just the constant government bashing, the whole business of Trump in the States, the depression, the awfulness, and to give people some sort of comedy input into a day, something positive in their feed that they could actually possibly laugh at. And I love Victoria Wood, I love Tom Lehrer, and these songs are sensational. It also gave me a nice outlet for writing new stuff and putting new bits in, bits of satire, bits of the new musicals, and making sure that I had something every day. It wasn't easy because you've got to. For some of them, I was starting sequencing from scratch and then putting the thing out the next day. So it meant 18-hour days, but I love that. The one thing about cruise ships is you never stop. And so I'm used to that sort of mindset. I have to keep working and working and working. Otherwise, things just fade away and I lose interest. So it's just nice to have some way to channel your energy.
So, as I've said before, that's what I was like. This is season 2 now. And the original season was supposed to be 10 episodes. And I was like, right, over 10 weeks, do that. 31 episodes later, we're on season 2.
But it's fascinating. You get this impetus. You start adding new elements here and there, and you completely leave your comfort zone. So eventually you run out of the material that you're comfortable with, and you work to interview new people and finding out new aspects of the entertainment industry. So yeah, absolutely. You've got to keep piling forward, no matter what situation it is. And the lockdown's been horrendous for so many people. But for some, we've managed to find new outlets and again, push ourselves just outside of our comfort zone. The wonderful thing about the way I work is that I am a solo act. You know, I do write my own stuff, and I do perform on my own. And so being a bit of a polymath in that way really helped me, because I could have input from here, and I'm writing a play at the moment as well, so I was able to concentrate and focus on that. Yeah, it's I'm loving it. It's set in an escape room.
Oh wow!
So yeah, I was actually writing a play about escape before we all got trapped. Bizarre.
Brilliant.
Hey, kismet, you know, it's happened.
So you were saying as well, you've recently got back on stage. Now, I've not been on stage since January, and I'm missing it.
Yeah.
What was it like going back on stage?
It's been it's been a revelation. Yeah. It's amazing how much I missed it. I didn't know. It wasn't so much the act of performing; it was the act of being in a theatre, you know, with people, and you forget how precious that is, you know. Yeah. And to be able to share a communal moment, honestly, it's been less about the theatre and more about community, because people from different societies at Huddersfield, Halifax, we've all got a very, very rich tradition of amateur societies, even societies like that turning professional and going on to other things. I've done some work with a play company called Dick and Lottie in the past. Oh, yeah. They've just sent a production to Broadway. And so there are astonishing highs that you can achieve just from this local level. And that is what this Live from the LBT has really shown. That when called, the community, whatever the danger, will come out. Now, the theatre put in a massive safeguards. I mean, literally, it was on sheets and sheets of paper as to what they had to do in order to get this thing done and get people back in. They hired the cheapest performers. Hello. And because we're all part of the amateur society, so none of us took any fee. And the technical teams have been working free as well, as have some of the front of house staff. And so it's been a huge volunteer movement in order to get this thing up and going. It wasn't a play, it was a traditional variety show. So because we couldn't rehearse together, it had to be stuff that we kind of done in the past or had written for a solo appearance or something like that. And so it came together like that. I wasn't part of it coming together. I was just asked to be a part of it. So I owe a great debt to the people like Chris Brearley and Henry at the Lawrence Batley who've really driven this forward. Massively successful. We had sellout performances towards the end, and when people got up the guts and saw that we were taking the social distancing measures seriously, that's when it all kicked in, and they were able to just relax and sit back and enjoy a night at the theatre. It's meant, I'm sure you haven't been, we couldn't fit many people in, and we were turning people away on Saturday. But the way it's worked is that the interval has been eliminated, because you know what happens at an interval. Yeah. Everyone gets up together and they all go to the loo together. Well, depending on depending on what happens. But you buy an ice cream together, you go to the bar together, and just couldn't have that. So we eliminated the interval. We said, go whenever you need to go, you know, come back through that door, go through those doors, create a one-way system, and we'll do it that way so that you don't have that blockage and people gathering. We also instituted a policy where you could just come and walk straight in and you were shown to your seat. The seats were distanced. The front few rows were turned into more cabaret-style seating.
Oh, yeah.
So there were tables with, and we were allowed 6 people around a table, which meant, again, you could go with people. The backstage area was even more heavily choreographed than the front stage, front of house area. So we were masked up backstage. There were dividers in the dressing rooms to make sure that we didn't get cross-contamination. It was meticulous, absolutely meticulous, and I was so proud to be part of it. And I was at every single one. How we progress from there and go beyond the just having a variety theatre element, and perhaps putting plays in there and making sure there are dance occasions and things like that. They're working on that, and hopefully it will happen shortly. It'll need some relaxation of the current COVID laws before we even think about doing traditional things like putting a play in with an interval. But for now, we've got what we've got, and to be honest, it's really marvellous. I've loved it.
That is absolutely brilliant to hear. They're taking huge steps.
It is a huge step, but we were featured in the Guardian a few times because there's nothing else. It was us. There was one week that we were the only thing featured because that's all there was. You know, so I mean, great to get a write-up in the Guardian. It sent a lot more people our way, but really depressing that other theatres couldn't quite do it in the same way. I think the theatre has to be a certain type. The Lawrence Batley Theatre has a very large backstage area. We were even using the Cellar Theatre as a dressing room as well, which gave us extra space. It's also a small-scale theatre. It's a community theatre. Which means that we could get funding from the council and get some input from them as well, and make sure that everything was COVID compliant. So yeah, huge steps, but it has to happen. I would urge all theatres to come and take a look at how the Lawrence Batley Theatre did it, in order to make sure that this isn't just one single idea, and that we do manage to keep theatre alive, not necessarily kicking, but alive during the COVID shutdown. Very important.
So moving on from that, we've already discussed your writing and play. So what is next for you? So obviously you're writing this escape room play.
That's going to happen. That will have to be sidelined for a moment because I've had a bit of movement with the musical. So now By George is coming back and we're now planning to actually put it on. Writing it is one thing, performing the songs and make sure that they work is another. But we're hoping now to push ahead, try and get choreographers, producers, directors interested in doing it. I did put it out at the beginning of the year to amateur societies because I wanted to see if someone local would do it. But now it looks like that professional theatre is going to take a look at it and see if it works. You know, so it's all very encouraging. Again, it wouldn't have happened without COVID. So I'm very, very lucky. Very.
So I just have one last question for you.
Go ahead.
Do you have any advice for anyone wanting to get into this wonderful industry once it's safe?
Well, that entirely depends on the direction. I mean, I've done so much within the cruise entertainment industry. I'm sorry, that industry is gone for the moment. Until cruising gets safe again. Cruising, unfortunately, pitches to an older demographic, and they're the ones most at risk. The likelihood of them suddenly upping sticks and just going on a cruise ship with 2,000 other people, that's not going to fly. So we can cut off that side of the industry. In terms of theatre, again, we are restricted as to what we can do at the moment. So we'll have to perhaps not shelve it. We need to work on it and make sure that what we can do, we do. We can do it in small doses and make sure that it's COVID compliant. It can be done, But again, in terms of actual putting on musicals with amateur societies, and that has to be shelved as well. So now the creative industries have to get genuinely creative. We've got to start using things like really properly engaging in social media. If you want to get into this business to make a profit, oh wow, I wish you all the luck in the world, because it's everything that everyone is trying to do. If you want to make a profit out of your material, copyright it. Wow, for goodness sake, get copyright on it. And you can do it. In order for something to be copyrighted, like a theatre show, it needs to be produced and performed. And nowadays, video the thing. Make sure you've got records. In terms of non-profit, suddenly we've got the world. The world is right at our fingertips. You know, in terms of every screen, if you can do it on a screen, people now want to see it. So it's time for things like monologues. It's time for writing your own material. It's time for putting it out there. And you never know. I'm the story that says the more you throw at people, the more you get back. And I'm glad that I managed to achieve something out of what is an incredibly depressing period for the entertainment industry. For me, it's not necessarily a new dawn. It's more an acceleration of what needed to be done, and I'm not there yet. And I still haven't made a penny out of this new musical yet. But hopefully, you know, we're looking towards the day when that will happen. Everything's crossed. Trust me, it's down there somewhere.
Well, Richard, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Where can people find you? Facebook, YouTube?
Yeah, I'm around on all the social media platforms. If you want to find me on Instagram, I'm there too. But if you want to find your way around, then just look at my website. It's richsykes.com. richsykes.com.
Link below.
Oh yes, please. Yeah, pop it up.
Link below.
Cheers.
But yeah, Richard, thank you so much.
And also, get people. Let me know what you think. There's comment sections. Just tell me what you think, because you're my audience, and I need to know whether you enjoy these things or not.
So get commenting. So Richard, thank you for joining, and thank you guys for tuning in to the first episode of season 2 of Interval Conversations.